My name is Paul. I'll be the host for today's webinar. I'm noticing that people are just still filing in, so I'm just going to give them a moment. We'll start in approximately 2 or 3 minutes, and the webinar will run roughly 20-25 minutes. I'm going to try to reserve some time at the end for all your questions. And if I don't get to a question while we're on the webinar, I will certainly do so after the webinar. So feel free to reach me. I will include my contact information on the last slide. So again, I see people are still filing in, and I just want to give everyone a moment to come on. So we're going to start at 2:03 approximately, and the webinar will run roughly 20 minutes. We have a lot to cover, so I'll try to keep some time at the end for questions. If I don't get to your question, as I said before, I will certainly do so after the fact, and I will include my contact information at the end of the presentation, so you can always reach me if you have a question that we, again, don't get to. Okay, I can still see people are filing in, so I'm just going to give them another minute, and we'll start at approximately 2:03. Again, we're going to be talking about really going from Series A to Series B to Series C funding on the back of an offshore labor strategy. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I love helping companies scale, so I'm looking forward to cover a few things that I think are going to be valuable. I certainly welcome feedback after the fact, so if you have some ideas on how the webinar could be improved, we're always open to listening. So. Okay, I'm going to start. There will also be a recording if we miss anything. So I'm just going to get started here. And again, I just want to talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. So that's really about how you can help your early stage technology company or services company really get funding, and how you can employ an offshore labor strategy early in your journey, and kind of the importance of doing that even when you start out. And so we'll cover a lot of ground. I'm going to try to get to some questions at the end, but if I don't, again, I want to remind you that I will certainly get back to you if you need something to a question to be resolved, and my contact information will be included at the end. So why don't we get started here? Um, so I'm going to go just with a rough agenda. This is not going to be a sales pitch. I want this to be valuable. Although at the end, I will talk a little bit about what we do at AbroadWorks, but the bulk of the presentation is just going to be about really empowering you to look at offshore, or look at how you can assemble a team, even in the earliest stages of your company's maturity. Okay. I'll talk a little bit about my background really, really briefly, and then we'll certainly go over some realities of startup survival. I don't want to spend too much time there. We'll also look at metrics investors want to see, and then we'll talk a little bit about why and what you should delegate, the countries that you could consider hiring from, and then just some best practices about hiring offshore. And lastly, I'll talk a little bit about AbroadWorks. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but that being said, we have to pay the bills. So I'll make sure I just talk a little bit about our service and how it could possibly help you. So a little bit about me. I've been fortunate enough to be part of three of the fastest growing companies in North America, all tech companies, recognized by Deloitte. And my background is finance. I also have formal education from MIT in digital marketing analytics, and I'm a former IB. So this is what I do now. Is I obviously serve as a CMO at AbroadWorks, and I work with a lot of small organizations, and my goal is to help them get bigger. And so what we're going to talk about today is obviously something that, again, is near and dear to my heart. I talk to a lot of small business owners. I really try to help them scale. And so that's what we're really going to talk about, how you can scale on the back of an offshore labor strategy, which I think is really, really important. And I'll talk a little bit about why that is. I just want to start with not too so much doom and gloom, but just talk a little bit about kind of the realities of what each of you might be facing as a startup. And what this really is about is even if you really get funding, the odds are still, stacked against you, right? The very small percentage of companies get funding, and even those that get funding, only a small percentage are super successful. But that's not to say that I want to demoralize you. What we're going to really talk about today is how you can improve your odds of success on the basis of human capital. And I don't want to be too doom and gloom here. Obviously, 70% of companies that even get funding often end up not in the place that they want to be. So we're going to really talk about how you can avoid that and really set your trajectory in the right way on, again, the back of an offshore labor strategy. So the first thing I always like to look at is really what are the metrics that you're going to be evaluated on? And investors are very concerned when they look at your company about a lot of metrics, but I'm going to highlight a few that I think are relevant to this topic today. And so these are really profitability metrics. The first one, gross margin, is obviously very common, and you're probably already aware. A lot of people are also fixated with CAC. Investors are fixated with what it costs you to secure a new client and how much you can make off of that client and the spread between those two things. If it costs you too much to acquire each and every client, and you're not making enough money off of them, obviously you're setting yourself up to go back to your day job. So that's an important metric to look at. The other thing that I kind of think about is burn rate, which is, how long can you survive given your current financials? And you want to have a runway when you start about 12 to 18 months. And you always want to have 12 months kind of in the back of your pocket, but not easy to do. And so a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today is how can you operate and how can you grow while adhering to these metrics and making yourself really attractive to investors. And it really starts with you as a founder, understanding that, it's really tough to do this on your own. And what tends to happen, is a lot of founders struggle with the delegation aspect, and so they burn out. And so the reality of the statistics that we looked at earlier, the reason I think a lot of companies don't make it as far as they would like is because the founders end up trying to do too much on their own. And you cannot scale a business by just doing more and more things. At some point, you have to learn how to delegate. That's really what we're here to talk about today. Um, if you can't delegate, you can't scale. And so when you try to think about your company as one person, if you cannot think of enough tasks, if you cannot understand how to delegate to another person, then how can you delegate to 10 or 100 or 1,000 people, which is really going to be the requirement for you as you scale your organization. So this is such an important skill to learn early. And that's, core of what we're about to talk about today. So, as a founder, your time is so precious and you have a lot of things that you have to do. And so it's important that you kind of understand what tasks are most warrant your time. And I think a lot of that is obviously kind of we look at these five kind of areas. The first being, kind of just what is the purpose? But there's so many important decisions that happen early on, and you really want to kind of dedicate time to those decisions, right? Weighing the pros and cons, really thinking things through. And so often we get caught up in really granular medial tasks that take us away from those high priority tasks. The second thing, if you look at all these other items below, building and leading a team, product development, fundraising and financial management, and marketing and scale and sales, All of those things require you talking to lots and lots of people, right? When you're building in your team, you're always looking for your next hire. You're looking for people that you could form a partnership with long term that can help you. And you need to be talking to lots of those people. And on the product development and innovation side, you want to talk to as many potential customers as possible. You want to understand their pains. You want to immerse yourself in the problem, right? And with fundraising and financial management, you always have to kind of be in contact with investors when you want to raise a round. So you have to kind of think about spending some time dedicating to prospecting, reaching out to potential investors, and cultivating those relationships. And then lastly, you never want to lose sight of revenue, which requires you to sell and be passionate about getting in front of people and expressing and showing them what you can do, really, right? What your product or your service may be able to do for them, right? So all these things require a lot of time, and you really have to kind of make sure that you're dedicating some time to each of these areas. I like this quote because it really dovetails into what we're about to talk about, and that's really you really need to learn how to, kind of focus on what you can do, and then everything else that doesn't really warrant your time, you have to kind of delegate, right? And that requires you to really think about yourself and have a lot of self-awareness in terms of, hey, I'm really good at accounting. But I'm not good at marketing or sales, and so I need to flank myself with those skills, right? So that requires deep understanding. In the beginning, you're gonna, like as we mentioned before, probably wear all of these hats, but it's also then understanding, okay, what do I need to hire first? Where am I the weakest? Where am I the strongest? And how do I really fill those gaps in? The problem becomes if you're looking in the US. Great people are just really expensive, and you can see here the trend line is up. I think we're at about 60K right now as the average salary in North America. And so what that means for you is that you really need great people around you, and successful businesses are built around smart people working together, highly engaged with the business. And the conundrum becomes for a lot of founders is how can I afford those people, right? How can I get the best people on my team? And then you go out into the marketplace and realize, the best people are price prohibitive. So how do you navigate that? Well, a lot of founders then end up going in the direction of giving up equity to acquire that talent or to partner with that talent. And as you can see here, most of these founders at the end of the day end up with a small percentage of their business because they go through that exercise. Now, that might seem like a great idea in the beginning, because you don't know where the business will go, and you want people that are really kind of motivated and inspired and are like I said earlier, engaged with your business. But over time, you'll realize that cap table shrinks further and further and becomes smaller and smaller. And you may regret some of those decisions that you had to make earlier on to bring in that talent. So there is another way, and that's really what we're here to talk about today. And that's the compelling case for offshore now, right? And it's always kind of been around, but there's been a lot of technology and improvements in the way that we communicate internationally that allow us to explore this, even if you're a small business. I think previously everyone's heard of Fortune 500 companies opening up an office, in another part of the world. But now those realities are and those options are available even to the smallest businesses. And our belief is that talent is equally distributed. And right now, we're living in a time when there's an arbitrage opportunity, meaning you can get tremendous, tremendous value by going offshore. You can save sometimes 50 to 70% on human and capital costs. But over time, what we anticipate is that it won't just be a value, or that value may dissipate to some degree as price parity improves, but then it will just be about finding the best talent wherever it is. And the companies that live in kind of this dated formula whereby they hire within a 25 mile radius of their office, those will be really antiquated because you'll want to hire the best person for the job regardless of where in the world they reside. And if you kind of want to know a little bit more about kind of the pay rates across the globe, we have a document on our website that covers pay parity. So you can always access that in the resources section if you want to learn a little bit more about international wages and understand kind of the opportunities in front of you in terms of different locales and the wages for each of them. So the question comes, where should you hire from? And there's a ton of options here. There's a ton of resources. I think different countries present different opportunities. Obviously, there's been a focus on hiring developers from India or Romania. There's a lot of American companies that hire salespeople in Canada or in South America. We like South Africa for sales hires. And I think a lot of the attractiveness of approaching these countries is also related to kind of the change in cultures, in that the world is shrinking, and a lot of different places in the world now watch the same shows. They speak English just as well. And so those cultural differences are shrinking, and the attractiveness and the educational systems of these candidates has improved. And so there's a tremendous opportunity to look at different places, different jurisdictions to find the talent that you need in your organization. So that being said, what we're going to talk about next is like how do you actually make that happen, right? And there's a lot of steps. You can do it on your own, so don't let anyone discourage you or tell you that you need to hire a service or a recruiter or work with another company, because you can do it on your own. There's just a lot of steps, and I think the first thing is it starts with kind of a job description, and that's a list of tasks or gaps in your skills or things that you're looking for. And when you're going international, you kind of just have to be aware that different skills and semantics might change. So you might have to research that a little bit, but there's tons of resources out there. If you want to message me, again, I'll include my contact information at the end of this call, and I can walk you through some of the resources that might be available to you that can help you with the job description and understanding how to post. Now, posting on international job boards is a little different than posting domestically. And there is the option of things like Fiverr and Upwork. The issue that I just want to mention with regards to those two is that the individuals that you can secure on Fiverr and Upwork can be great, and they have reviews, and you can get a sense of the quality of their work because they might have examples. The issue is that you're often sharing them with other clients, and their mandate is to secure as many clients as possible. So they are not as focused on necessarily your company. And so that's kind of one of the limitations that I see with working with Fiverr or Upwork. On the other end, you have these job boards like Monster, Indeed, LinkedIn. And what I suggest is when you decide on a role or you decide on a jurisdiction, you have to research the job boards that are popular in that jurisdiction. So for example, in South Africa, they may not use Monster, and instead they use LinkedIn, and that's based on some of our findings. But you'll kind of can get a sense of that. So you'll have to spend some time researching that. When you post on international job boards, you often get thousands of resumes, and that highlights kind of the desire of many candidates that are offshore in terms of wanting to pursue opportunities like this. So sometimes the issue will be for you when you post this job is you get so many resumes and then kind of having to sift through those resumes. And one of the challenges that comes up with that is you may not recognize the schools, you may not recognize the companies, and so parsing through those resumes becomes more tedious. So you'll have to spend some time researching, hey, what's a good school for developers in Romania, or what's a good school for business majors in South Africa? And so some time has to be dedicated to that process. It usually takes a couple of days, if not longer, to review those resumes, and you kind of want to take your time with that. One thing that comes up is because you might not recognize the schools, you may not understand the complexities of the companies they or their previous experience. We recommend that you do standardized testing. And that doesn't have to be complicated. You can focus on kind of the skills that are required for the job. There's a couple of companies out there that help you with the testing. If you want to message me after the webinar, I can certainly point you in that direction. But standardized testing levels the playing field and lets you understand the aptitude. Not everything is going to be perfect when you hire internationally. There will be some cultural differences. There will be some educational differences. And that testing is a great way to unearth really top talent. And so we encourage all of our partners to do that as much as they can. And then you'll have to kind of do some interviews. My recommendation there is to come up with a scale, some kind of matrix, have some criteria in terms of what you're looking for. Maybe one criteria is personality, maybe one criteria is English skills in terms of communication, written and verbal, and so on and so forth. But you just really, again, want to standardize your scoring matrix so that you remove as much bias as possible with your hiring. Then, after you've decided on a candidate, you did still do background checks. There's going to be some legal and contracts issues that you have to go look research. I can help you with that also. There's a lot of resources available. There's companies like Deal. There's companies like Global Papaya that specialize in EOR services or PEO services that can facilitate that for you. You'll also have to decide things like, is this going to be a full-time employee or a contract employee? And there's nuances to that. So if that's something that you want to talk about, again, you can message me after. And lastly, then, you want to think about how are you going to pay this person in one of our ebooks on our website related to hiring offshore and scaling your business. We cover those payment options in depth. So I recommend that you kind of look at that. But there are a number of options, including Gusto and Wise, that facilitate international payments. So you can certainly do explore one of those options, and they have come a long way to make that process a little bit easier for you. If have any questions on anything that I've talked about, again, please feel free to message me after the webinar, and I'll be more than happy to help you. I do want to talk a couple of minutes about how we help in the process. So we cover that entire continuum from finding offshore talent, creating job postings and job descriptions. We automate the resume parsing process. We do role-specific testing. We can take care of all the contracts, the legals, the payroll, and we also can do productivity tracking so you know exactly what your offshore resource is working on at any given time. And we can automate payroll. We also have technology. If it's just one of these areas that you want to utilize us for, we can certainly help on that front. We try to make it really easy for you if you haven't hired offshore before, especially if you're a startup. And we have no upfront costs. We kind of treat it as staffing as a service. We try to bake it into one easy to manage cost that you can add to your hourly cost, sorry, to add to your expenses. And we do a lot of role-specific testing that yields the best candidates. You can meet with candidates for free and only hire someone when you fall in love with a candidate. I do see some questions rolling in, so I just want to get to that. Again, my contact information is here. If I don't get to your question, then I can certainly reach out to you after the fact and make sure that we answer anything, no strings attached. One question that I see coming in right now is related to English speaking. There are certain areas so this comes up frequently, so that's why I want to talk about it, is that there are certain areas where English is more proficient. And so I think, if you're thinking about the Philippines or India, English is very prominent in those areas. And it's gotten a lot better than it used to be. We recommend, again, testing for English, both written and communication skills. Our recruiters, if you do decide to work with us, do screenings prior to having you meet with them. So we weed out anyone that may not be up to the code in terms of English language. But the other thing that you have to consider is certain roles where English is more critical, like sales roles or an account management role or a customer service role, and other roles like accounting or back office support where it's less critical, just kind of account for that. And you're not going to get everything you want with a candidate, so you might have to sacrifice somewhere, and it's kind of, on a case by case basis, but that's the way that we look at it. And then I see another question here related to our pricing. And I know I didn't cover this, but generally, it really depends on the role. We start at roughly $9 an hour. That's fully baked. That includes our margin, and we take care of taxes, benefits, vacations, and also set you up with kind of what I said, including some productivity tracking and searches with us are for free. So we try to stay within that range of $9 to $11, but certainly some roles are harder to fill. Dev roles I can think of immediately. But that being said, I think in general, there's still, like I said, a tremendous opportunity because you save considerably against US prices. We're still hovering at around, I would say, 50 to 70% of what you see in the US in terms of salaries, annual salaries. Lastly, I see a question here about contract versus full-time employees. This is a big change that's happened recently. I think because the global marketplace for human capital has opened up, it's made it more realistic for small businesses to hire full-time employees internationally through EOR services like the one we offer. Like there are several others that are out in the marketplace. So a lot of the best candidates want to be full-time employees, but that being said, many are happy with contract work, and you can put together paperwork that outlines a contractual relationship. We can help you to do that if required. So those resources are available, but the option is yours. It's on a case-by-case basis. But that being said, I will say that there has been a shift for more and more of the best candidates to want full-time employment. And there are some nuances to that you'll have to research. I want to remind you, if you want to talk about it, you can always reach me at paul@abroadworks.com. I'm going to stop the webinar there. Again, if you have any questions, if there's something that I covered that you want me to go over further, please feel free to reach me. I loved helping small businesses. I'm more than happy to talk anytime, no strings attached. Alternatively, if there's anything that you felt was missing in the webinar or that we can improve the webinar with, then I'd encourage you to also come forward. I would certainly love to hear from you. I want to thank everyone again for joining the webinar, taking time out of your day to talk to me. I hope you found it beneficial. Just want to reiterate, I do believe that we are on the cusp of a material change in working dynamics. More and more startups are going offshore. You have to be really cognizant of the metrics that you need to hit. Going to offshore candidates helps you hit those metrics because it lets you operate with a certain degree of frugality that's attractive. And so I think this is a very important topic. If you have, again, any questions, you want me to go over anything, or you wanted to talk about your case specifically, then please feel free to reach me at paul@abroadworks.com. Thank you again and have a great day.